Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Caregiver Crosswalk, Dementia Care Consulting. Never roam alone.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, downsizing in the senior living industry.
And I'm Corey Sirota, clinical social worker and psychotherapist, specializing in grief and loss.
You know, I have to bring up, Corey, something I'm very proud to be participating in this Thursday, actually. It's a big fundraiser for Nova West Island. It's going to be a golf shootout at the Beaconsfield Golf Course, and my golfing partner is none other than CJD's Andrew Carter. So we'll be a bunch of, now rules unfortunately have changed and may change again tomorrow. What was supposed to be a whole, dining experience has all of a sudden become burgers on the go at the 10th green, but still for a very, very good cause for all the wonderful people at Nova West Island. Looking forward to that.
No question. I'm sure it's going to be weather permitting and COVID distancing permitting. It's a great cause. Yes. So good luck to you on that. We'll hear about that next week.
Yes.
Now back to the issue at hand. Okay. There's no question there have been a lot of unsung heroes throughout this pandemic. Yes, the healthcare workers, the people providing essential services, teachers. I could go on and on, so I apologize if I haven't listed someone that you know on that list. But I want to add to that list because there are these pets. They are incredible and they've become true heroes during the pandemic. Some would even argue that they've been the biggest source of mental health, helping our mental health and well-being. So I'm really looking forward to this interview. We have Zoe Quinn Phillips on the line to talk about this very topic. Zoe is a certified dog behavior consultant and the owner of PUP, a relationship-centered dog behavior and wellness company. Her work has focused on the social and physical development of puppies, making PUP a leader in puppy training for family pets and working therapy dogs. Welcome to the show, Zoe.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So let me just ask in general for our listeners, how many Canadians, do you know statistically how many Canadians actually have pets?
In terms of pets, cats, and dogs, it's about 75% of the population. And it's almost an even split between cats and dogs, with just a few more homes having cats over dogs.
I'm amazed at that number.
I thought it
was, maybe half, but 75%. That is quite amazing.
It's a lot, and I'm sure it's growing.
Zoe, I work a lot in seniors and seniors residences, and I've seen firsthand the therapeutic benefits of pets with seniors, but it is much greater than that. Can you go over some of the therapeutic benefits of pets? Yes, I mean,
I'll speak specifically about dogs since that's my specific area, but it would also lend itself to cats. There's a lot of research that shows just the physical contact and companionship of a pet in terms of when we're interacting with them can slow our heart rate, regulate our breathing. It's really just really soothing for any anxiety or depression symptoms, as well as they really enhance our lives and kind of keep us more active and connected. So with dogs, get us out of the house, so that works for our cardiovascular system, getting into the sunshine, getting some vitamin D and fresh air. They're really there's a huge spectrum of how they impact our lives.
It sounds to me like it's really really holistically beneficial to have a pet. That's Zoe Quinn Phillips talking about the therapeutic benefits of pets, especially during this pandemic. And I have noticed, I'm in the 25%. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. I'm in the 25%. But my family would crack up. I talked about maybe we should get a pet because it's very isolating. So Have you noticed any observations around dogs, in particular dogs, during this pandemic?
For sure. In addition to my work as a behavior consultant, I'm also a breeder of Alaskan Malamutes, and my puppy inquiry rate has gone up, I would say, 20-fold. Now, not all of those people are translating into puppy owners with me specifically, but it's definitely showing a spike in interest and seeing families explore adding a dog to their homes. A lot of our clients have also, if they have an older dog, have started the process of getting a puppy, and I think part of that is to ensure that they're never without a pet. So we're seeing homes with one dog get a second. We're seeing homes that haven't had a dog in a while make that leap now. And I really think that's because of the isolation of the pandemic.
It makes a lot of sense what you're saying, and not surprising that there are a lot of inquiries. And Corey, I've talked quite a bit about our Great Dane at home, our 120-pounder.
How much does she weigh now, Matt?
She's maxed out at 120, which is actually considered smaller by Great Dane standards. But honest, we don't have kids at home anymore, and I don't know what we'd do without our Zola. She has been such a source of, brings a smile. And you brought up a good point, Zoe. I think for a lot of pet owners, cats might be a little different, but particularly for dogs, not only the benefits at home, but outside the home. They've got to go for walks. It gets you out. So there's that whole physical aspect of that as well. So I think that's quite important. And I'd be interested. I joke with Stephanie, my wife, the dogs must be saying, okay, aren't you leaving yet? Isn't it time to go to work? What's going on? So I'm wondering, from the dog's perspective, have you seen any negative consequences from a pet perspective, Zoe?
Unfortunately, we have. We've seen, as you mentioned, most people have not been going out. They've been working from home. Kids were home from school from March through to the summer. Many camps were suspended or canceled. So we're seeing a huge spike right now, especially as life started to resume a little bit in the last month or so, of an increase in separation anxiety from dogs. So that could be older dogs who had a history of mild anxiety, and now having had their people home with them for the last 6 months, they were able to soothe themselves through their people by soliciting, contact and affection and being with them. And also in those homes that did get puppies during the pandemic, those puppies were raised believing that people were always home, so they'd actually never experienced being home alone before. And so that's a big shift. So we've, a lot of our support services, our walk programs, et cetera, have been really busy and high demand because these puppies that are not used to being home alone, having a dog walker or doggy daycare helps kind of bridge that new reality and gives them some social time while their people are out and being busy, and that way they can slowly adjust to being home alone.
That's Zoe Quinn Phillips talking about therapeutic benefits of having pets, especially during the pandemic. I have noticed, even pre-pandemic, a lot of families with more than one dog. So I'm wondering, good, bad, is it better for the dogs to have more than one families, or actually the dogs themselves to have more than one pet, whether it's pet dogs, cats? What's your take on that?
I think it's really case by case. I think most of the time, most pets appreciate having another companion, whether it's, a dog having a dog or a dog having a cat or vice versa. I mean, I don't know how many cats love having a dog.
Right.
They tend to be the boss of the dynamic, but they may prefer a cat in place of a dog. That would really depend on the individual. It definitely can be a huge benefit if the second dog coming into the home is also being matched to the first dog. So if you have, for example, a dog who is a little bit anxious, you want to make sure if you're adding a second dog that you bring in a dog with a very calm demeanor who's not going to feed into that anxiety of the older dog, but instead could actually be a therapeutic benefit to the first dog.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it's a big family decision too.
Sure.
It's
For sure.
The kids want it, but here's the reality: they are kids themselves. Zoe, you are a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to be talking about a phenomenon that's happening with rescues, and we're also, based on the fact that you're talking about and increased inquiries about getting a dog. I know, we have had several dogs in our lifetime, and we kind of know the process. But for those going through it the first time, it is a big family decision, and you specialize in trying to have that proper matching process, and what considerations we need to take into account in making that decision. So we're going to hear from Zoe on the other end of traffic.
Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Leanna Senior Transition Support, specialists in downsizing and seniors residences.
Welcome back. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corey Sirota, along with my co-host, Matt Del Vecchio, and we are talking to Zoe Quinn Phillips about the therapeutic benefits of pets, especially dogs, during this pandemic. So earlier you had mentioned that there's definitely been an increase in inquiries about getting dogs. And so we understand, or I'm coming to learn, that there's a matching process that really needs to happen. So if you can help us understand what are the important considerations that need to be taken into account before making that big decision.
Absolutely. I think top line is having a really realistic picture of your current lifestyle, your family, how much free time or extra time can you carve out for bringing in a dog. That right away will help you figure out, do you have time for a puppy? So a puppy is a baby dog. They are very much like infant children, but on an accelerated program. So you get a puppy at 2 or 3 months of age, and that first 9 months that you spend with them until they're a year old, that pretty much completes the bulk of their puppy rearing in terms of getting them trained in the home and on your own lifestyle routine. Of course, there's more training as they go into adolescence, but that's a different topic. So really being aware of, are you able to bring in a puppy and raise a baby, or are you better off looking for an older dog? Also being realistic about your family. If you've got young kids, my personal preference is to match families with young kids to a purebred dog where we have the complete history of the puppy coming in, or the older dog. There's no unknowns, no variables or things that could pop up later in behavior issues, which we can see with rescues. Adopting an adolescent rescue, you don't know what happened to them in their puppyhood, and some behavior issues kind of rear their heads later. And with young kids, I don't like to roll that dice. So if you have older kids and you are looking for an older dog, rescue could be an amazing way to go about it. And just like any process, when you're looking where to get a dog, where you're looking at a responsible rescue or a good breeder, nobody is all the same as everybody else. You really want to make sure that you know who you're working with and how the dog has been raised, and in the case of a rescue, how they've been screened.
I work with new moms, and it just came up the question the other day. Better to have the puppy before the baby or the baby before the puppy?
I think in many ways it's easier to have the puppy before the baby, because if you have the puppy, let's say 6 to 12 months before the baby, you've got that puppy used to your home environment, you've got them on a routine, you're able to kind of anticipate what rules you're going to shift into place when the baby arrives. If you're going to be nursing the baby or feeding the baby in the living room, for example, are you going to want the puppy on the sofa? No, then you're going to train that into your puppy before the baby even arrives. So you've already got this your dog ready with all the rules and routines, and then when the baby arrives, you have more of your time to focus on the baby.
Excellent.
I think once the baby, if you do it the other way, you're better off waiting until your baby is a toddler, as opposed to a true infant when you're bringing in a puppy, or otherwise you were going to raise 2 infants at the same time.
It makes a lot of sense. So you're listening to Life Unrehearsed with Matt and Corey. That's Zoe Quinn Phillips, and she's a certified dog behavior consultant. And Zoe, you talked about older dogs as well. Many older dogs are rescues. You've mentioned rescues. And in our little pre-interview, Zoe, you talked about an amazing phenomenon that I would have never thought of about rescues. Can you tell us?
I think what's not always understood is rescues today in our bigger shelters. They're not always reflective of a local rescue problem. We're actually getting much better about responsible dog ownership, thankfully. So a lot of our bigger shelters for the last several years, have been importing dogs from other areas, either from the United States or from other countries like Korea. So a lot of the dogs in rescue shelters have actually been purchased and imported in. So what we noticed during the pandemic was a lot of the shelters were empty, and it wasn't just because people were looking for pets at an increased rate, but the transportation system and everything broke down, as we're all aware of, during the lockdown, and so they weren't able to import dogs at the same rate. So a lot of our shelters, and this is not just a Quebec situation or Canada, this is North America, a lot of the shelters were actually just empty of dogs. And we had several clients who were desperate to rescue. They didn't want to work through a breeder, and every rescue just didn't, they weren't replying to them, or they just didn't have any dogs available, which is pretty amazing.
Zoe, I heard another really actually disturbing piece of information, which was everyone ran out because they were isolated to get animals, to get dogs and cats, etc. And there may have been an issue or a problem around, then they got back into their lives and realized maybe it wasn't such a good idea. Mm-hmm. Were you aware of any of that?
I haven't actually seen a lot of that firsthand. I would assume that some of that does exist. And again, I think that's really an important piece to highlight in why you want to work with a good breeder or a responsible rescue is that they're really going to screen you, and they're going to ensure that just because you have the time now, they want to know that you're going to have the time when life resumes to, air quotes, normal. So as I mentioned for my own breeding program, my rate of inquiries went up probably 20 times, but the number of homes that translated to my waiting list stayed about the same because my screening process stayed the same. So while everyone was telling me how much time they had now and how they're working from home, my questions were, what will life look like when you aren't working from home? What does that timeline look like in theory? And do you still have time for a dog that will still be a puppy at that point? And I think that weeded out a lot of people and made them stop and think that they had to think beyond just, what does life look like in March and April, but what will it be like now in October?
Good on you and the responsible owners to have those very serious conversations. Unfortunately, some didn't take as such a serious conversation. We're going to wrap up real quick here, Zoe. However, we want to ask you one more question concerning, with everyone, not everyone, but a vast majority of employees working from home now, routines are most likely getting changed, specifically for dogs and walking and so on. What do you suggest with routines? Should you take the dog out 1 or 2 extra times a day? I'm assuming there will be benefits to that, or could we actually could that be a negative effect?
I think, again, it could depend on the dog. Some dogs really thrive on structure, and if the routine is knocked off a little bit, that could be a source of stress for them. But for the most part, I think everyone's better off getting out a little bit more often if you can, and not every day has to be the same. So I think it's good to know you can look at the weather forecast and you can give a much bigger exercise day on a beautiful sunny day. And if tomorrow is going to be rainy, you can kind of do a shortcut to that exercise and maybe give the dog different activity toys to play with in the house. Because you can exercise the body and you can exercise the brain, and dogs really benefit from both types of stimulation. So I think a baseline routine is a good idea in terms of meal times and basic needs, but it can be flexible.
So thank you so much, Zoe. Such sound advice. How can people reach you?
Our website is PUP, P-U-P, Wellness, WELLNESS.com.
Thank you so much for all that information and
my pleasure.
And for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Really lovely chatting with you.
Thank you, Zoe.
Matt, what's up for next week?
All right, next week, we're very pleased to have philanthropist and business leader Jonathan Weiner as our guest. He knows a thing or two about giving back, and we're going to hear how everyone can make a small little difference even in these trying times.
And Thanksgiving is quickly approaching. What are you grateful for? We're going to hear your responses as we focus on some of the positive things happening in our lives.
Looking forward to that. We've already put a shout out on our Life Unrehearsed Facebook page, and we're getting some answers already on that one. So thank you very much for listening. We also want to thank our technical producer, Dave Simon. And you can catch us every Sunday at 4 p.m. on Life Unrehearsed here on CJD 800.